As a travel writer, I have the bad habit of writing about myself. I plant forests of eyes over pages and leave behind trails of thoughts and feelings that I think will change the world, but that only succeed in embarrassing me. A historical and political book of this nature warrants a more formal and less personal style. While this book, outside of this chapter, may come across as impersonal, I do wish to say up front that it has, in fact, been written with passion and feeling. For me, the seemingly boring subjects of property law, land use planning, and public access legislation are, well, personal. Let me start by telling you about where I grew up. On the western edge of New York State, between the cities of Buffalo and Niagara Falls, is Wheatfield. Sprawling over 28 square miles of mostly flat land and bordered on one end by the mighty Niagara River, Wheatfield was not too long ago a countryside of forests and cornfields. Before white settlers moved into the area in the mid-1800s, the land was a relatively untouched forest inhabited by Native American tribes. Wheatfield's soil is well suited for growing wheat, so when the settlers arrived, wheat became a local staple. Then came the Erie Canal. Then industry grew, both in Buffalo and Niagara Falls, and in the second half of the 20th century, the middle class fled the cities to live out the suburban American dream. In less than 200 years, the character of the land shifted from wild to farm to suburb. If you drive through Wheatfield today, you might not be all that impressed. The town's schools, churches, pizzerias, ballparks, retirement homes, and shopping centers are scattered incoherently. You'd see that it's just yet another poorly planned American town, aggressively developed without aesthetic vision or forethought. Its natural beauties, of which there are plenty, are obscured by the fast roads, endless subdivisions, and RV dealership monstrosities. It is, shall we say, a town without charm. Since there is no main street, town center, or civic landmark, it's a stretch to even call it a town, with all the connotations of cohesion that being a town implies. Yet it is a place that remains happy and peaceful in my dreams, for it was, for a time at least, a boyhood paradise. My family was among the first to move into a subdivision in Wheatfield called Country Meadows. During our first couple of years in Country Meadows, my brother and I would play in a thin strand of woods between our backyard and a cornfield. In the adjoining lot, still wild and vacant, we skated on a pond in the winter and collected tadpoles from it in the summer. A bunch of new families had just moved to Wheatfield, which back in the late 1980s was mostly farms and fields. We were all strangers. We were all trespassers. There weren't any grouchy old landowners. There weren't any exclusionary signs, rules, or customs. It was a suburb without fences. It was a countryside without guns. And it was suddenly populated by a bunch of excited, working-class families who'd just bought their first homes. My boyhood friends and I roamed over the muddied construction lots, passed through woods, and extended our little football fields and baseball diamonds onto our neighbors' newly planted lawns. We played in the neighborhood's half-constructed homes, some of us laying siege to our friends inside those plywood castles with an artillery of mud clumps. We stole scrap lumber and built forts in the woods behind my home. My family let our golden retriever out night or day to sniff and chase and wander where he wished, unleashed. Later, as teenagers, we walked between homes to play football on a huge stretch of grass behind our subdivision. We never thought to ask who owned that grass. I remember the storms of cawing blackbirds that would descend to feed on our back lawn. I remember the stink of the freshly manured cornfield. I remember the humid summer nights, the smell of raw pumpkin pulp, the lawns bronzed with blankets of fall foliage. I remember the snow tunnels and snowball wars. In all of my years in Country Meadows, I can remember only one sharp word from a homeowner for trespassing. For the most part, I remember a land without fences, without signs, without prohibitions.